You're running along on your morning jog, nothing out of the ordinary. You're running. All of a sudden you step into that pothole, you twist your ankle, it swells up, there's a lot of pain. What do? When you go home, do you rice it? So do you just do the rest, ice, compression, elevation? Is that actually helpful in the treatment of ankle sprains? In this episode, we're going to discuss evidence-based treatment for ankle sprains. The diagnosis of ankle sprains are pretty straightforward. So typically there's a history of some sort of trauma, whether you're walking, running, playing a sport like basketball, volleyball, or soccer, and you either rolled your ankle or you twisted it, and then maybe you heard a pop, and then there's pain and swelling on the outside of the ankle. One of the concerns with an ankle sprain is whether you suffered a fracture. The way that we determine if imaging is needed for an ankle sprain is we use what are called the Ottawa ankle rules. For the Ottawa ankle rules, we're looking for tenderness in one of four different places. So either on the back side of the malleolus, so either the medial or the lateral malleolus, or we'd also be looking for tenderness on either the navicular bone, which is on the inside portion of the foot, or we'd be looking for tenderness on the fifth metatarsal, so on the outside of the fifth toe. We'd also be looking to see if you're able to take more than 4 steps. If none of these symptoms are present, then we can be fairly certain that there's not a fracture in the ankle and that we don't need imaging. If any of these symptoms are present, then we should get an X-ray to see if there's a fracture in any one of those areas. Assuming that there's not a fracture to the ankle, then we can treat most ankle sprains conservatively. There was recently a consensus statement published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, which looked at the most effective treatment options for ankle sprains. Rice and ice are the most common treatment recommendations for ankle sprains. So rice stands for rest, ice, compression, elevation, and ice just stands for ice, compression, and elevation. What the review found was that there was very little evidence to support the use of rice or ice for the treatment of ankle sprains. And that was looking at either pain, swelling, and also just function in general. While there's not much downside to using rice or ice for an ankle sprain, it's also just not that beneficial alone in the treatment of ankle sprains. So as long as we're combining with something, it's okay, but by itself it's also just not that helpful. NSAIDs such as aspirin or ibuprofen are also commonly recommended to help decrease the pain and also decrease the swelling after an ankle sprain. The review found that NSAIDs can be helpful after an ankle sprain in decreasing the pain and also decreasing the swelling, but they also cautioned that NSAIDs have also been found to decrease healing, and so while they're helpful in decreasing the pain and swelling, they can also have longer term effects because they can slow down the healing. Exercise for the treatment of ankle sprains was recommended. And in fact, they actually recommended incorporating exercise as soon as possible, and that's because it leads to quicker recovery times and better treatment outcomes. Exercise therapy can include the traditional banded exercises where you're just trying to strengthen the muscles around the ankle in a variety of different positions, so dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, inversion, eversion, all those ranges of motion so that the muscles around the ankle are nice and strong. But it also includes balance and coordination exercises, so whether you're on a Bosu ball or even like an air disc or something like that where you're trying to work on some more reactive training of the muscles around the ankle. There wasn't a specific exercise program that was recommended in the review article, and this gives us a little bit of flexibility when we're treating ankle sprains. So we might start off with some simple range of motion exercises like drawing the alphabet with our ankle, or we might start with those banded exercises where we're starting to strengthen the muscles around the ankle, or we might even be able to start doing some loaded exercises where we're doing some heel raises and stuff like that. And it all kind of depends on the person. So some people are not going to be able to tolerate doing a heel raise right after an ankle sprain. They might have to start off with those range of motion exercises in the beginning instead. But regardless of where we start, the exercise program should gradually increase the load as we progress through the program. So we want to keep adding load so we're strengthening the muscles around the ankle, but then we're also doing those balance and coordination exercises as well. Of note, the research article also found that early joint mobilization to the ankle helped to decrease pain and restore range of motion in the ankle. So this joint mobilization can be added to an exercise program to help speed up the recovery process after an ankle sprain. So in summary, the traditional rice and ice methods for treating an ankle sprain actually aren't all that beneficial in helping to recover from an ankle sprain. Instead, the emphasis should be on exercise and gradually increasing the strength and coordination of the muscles around the ankle. And then we can also add in joint mobilizations to the ankle to help speed up the recovery process a little bit faster. Thank you for watching this episode on ankle sprains. I hope that you found this information useful. If you did, go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more of my content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, which pretty sure is on this side, but you know, it might be on this side. Wherever that red button is, go ahead and push that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.